Here's a headline for you guys. Canada moves to begin euthanizing children without parental control. This was something I saw on Reddit today. So naturally, I was alarmed, right? Because like euthanizing children is one thing without parental consent. Anyways, before we proceed with this conversation, I'd like to provide a bit of a trigger warning. We may talk about medical assistance in dying in some depth here in this conversation here. Feel free to skip this particular video and come back next time. I won't take it personally. But before we go any further, I wanted to confirm the current eligibility criteria for accessing medical assistance in dying here in Canada. As of last update in July of 2024, persons who wish to receive MAID, as it is called, medical assistance in dying, must meet the following eligibility criteria. They must be 18 years of age or older and have decision-making capacity. They must be eligible for publicly funded healthcare services. They must make a voluntary request that is not the result of external pressure. They must give informed consent to receive MAID, meaning that the person has consented to receiving MAID after they have received all information needed to make this decision. 5, they must have a serious and incurable disease or disability, excluding mental illness until March 17th, 2027. So by March of 2027, people can request MAID on grounds of mental illness, just not right now. Number 6, they must be in an advanced state of irreversible decline in capability. And number 7, they have enduring and intolerable physical or psychological suffering that cannot be alleviated under the conditions the person considers acceptable. Obviously, even with all these conditions, there are many procedural safeguards currently in place that I won't go through here in this video. Anyways, I looked up the source of this headline because I was alarmed. Naturally, I was alarmed, right? Children getting euthanized without parental consent? What? Anyways, it is from this website right here, slaynews.com. That's where this particular headline seems to have originated from. It was published today, actually, May 20th, 2025. You'll see from the language that this website is right wing. When I start to read, you'll see immediately why I say that. They're right wing. So bear with me. Some of the language is quite inflammatory, but the article says the globalist Canadian government has launched a campaign to promote a new push to begin euthanizing children with mental health issues without their parents' consent. The new scheme seeks to open up the country's medical assistance in dying to children. Liberal Party Prime Minister Mark Carney's government describes those children who would be eligible for assisted suicide using the alarmingly vague term mature minors. Let me pause there for a sec. I know this gets confusing for some people. Mark Carney has a PhD in economics. He's not a medical doctor. He's not in a position to put names and terms and whatever. And you might wonder why I need to clarify that in 2025. There were people talking about how former President Joe Biden's wife didn't catch his cancer early. Isn't she a doctor? Some of these people were saying. Yeah, so I think you have to clarify to people that Joe Biden is actually a doctor of education. Again, bear with me, guys. Second point, I have not seen Mark Carney talk about medical assistance in dying once. If you can find evidence of that, you can let me know. Clearly, this article is reaching a lot to establish some sort of connection between Mark Carney in order to further whatever agenda they're trying to push here. Anyways, let's proceed. The article goes on to say, according to the Canadian government's promotional material, children with mental health issues would be euthanized without parental consent under the expanded laws. The move to expand the eugenics program to mature minors was revealed in flyers distributed by the Canadian government. Jasmine Lane, the host of Over Opinionated, shared the flyers on social media that are being circulated in Manitoba. Here's that flyer right here, actually. I'll read you the part circled in color here. It says, 1 in 10 people will wait more than 4 months for counseling. The waiting period for MAID is only 3 months. Obviously, I can see why someone would be alarmed when you read that, right? In a post on X, Jasmine Lane wrote, you have to be a special kind of demonic to advocate for MAID for young, vulnerable people and people who are suicidal. Imagine walking into a clinic for help and being told the world would be better off without you, that you should cave to the lies the devil on your shoulder is telling you, and it would be more affordable for Canada's healthcare system if you were gone. Okay, look, I haven't seen the flyer, and I know better than to draw conclusions just by seeing a picture online. I don't know the context, so I'm not going to jump to conclusions. That said, I don't like the framing on this particular flyer. Personally, I don't think MAID should get flyers or ads. I think that should be something you hear about at the hospital, when at the point you need it. I don't think it should be something that gets flyers, in my opinion. Here's the other opinion I have about this. I think when people think about mental illness, maybe they're thinking in their minds about like schizophrenia or depression or stuff along those lines. And obviously the debate is out on whether that should ever be under the umbrella of things that are allowed under MAID. Here's a question for you guys. Would you be okay with a person with, say, dementia or Alzheimer's getting medical assistance in dying? Now, technically, those two illnesses are regarded as disabilities, not mental illnesses. But should a person with these conditions be able to request MAID? Anyways, let's focus on minors. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. I'm not going to read the rest of the article. You get the picture. Right away, the part we all want to know is if kids or mature minors will get access to medical assistance in dying. For that, I had to go find this report that was tabled in Parliament in 2023, before Mark Carney was ever on the scene. It is titled Medical Assistance in Dying in Canada, Choices for Canadians. This is a report of the Special Joint Committee on Medical Assistance in Dying. So let's see what it says here about mature minors. It is a 138-page report, so I'm not going to read you everything. There are a few interesting mentions of mature minors I wanted to point out. Okay, for MAID and mature minors, the committee heard a mix of views about whether MAID should be available to those under the age of 18. Many witnesses believed that age alone does not determine whether someone is capable of consenting to MAID. At the same time, a cautious approach was recommended. That's key right there. At the same time, a cautious approach was recommended, especially since there is little evidence from youth themselves on this topic. Most witnesses agreed that if MAID for mature minors were allowed, it should only be under track 1, which is reasonably foreseeable natural death. The committee recommends that mature minors should have access to MAID under track 1. The committee also recommends that youth be consulted on the topic of MAID and mature minors. So the key part of this is MAID should only be allowed for mature minors under the condition of reasonably foreseeable death. So that just means that there is some certainty that they will die. Okay? Here's another important point. This part addresses whether parental consent will be needed even in the event of establishing reasonably foreseeable death. The report says that the government of Canada established a requirement that, where appropriate, the parents or guardians of a mature minor be consulted in the course of the assessment process for MAID, but that the will of the minor who is found to have the requisite decision-making capacity ultimately take priority. Okay, so just to paraphrase that, parents will be consulted, but ultimately the decision of a minor with requisite decision-making capacity will take priority. I guess the question there is, how do you establish requisite decision-making capacity? And who's a mature minor anyways? Like how do you define that? There's actually a part of the report that actually shed some light on what the government would consider a mature minor. So this part here. A December 2021 report published by the Collège des Médecins de Quebec, which is the Quebec College of Medicine essentially, concludes that minors aged 14 and older should have access to MAID with parental consent, which accords with Quebec's existing healthcare consent law. Several representatives of the college reiterated this position in their testimony, including college president Dr. Maril Godrol, who explained that for mature minors aged 14 to 18 years, our thinking was based on the following considerations. First of all, suffering does not pay any attention to age. Suffering has no age. Then, the Act already acknowledges that minors aged 14 and over have the right to consent on their own to certain types of care, such as abortions. The consent of parents or guardians is compulsory, of course, when care represents a serious risk to a minor's health. Okay, so I think we've got all the information we need here. We know what conditions under which a minor may be allowed to pursue MAID. We know what a mature minor is, and we know whether consent is required or not. So I want to bring it back to the title of that very alarming article I read earlier. Canada moves to begin euthanizing children without parental consent. Well, the truth is, the way you may feel about this depends on whether you believe kids with terminal illnesses should be able to end their own suffering on their own terms. That's a philosophical question. And I really want to hear from you guys on this one. Like, what do you think? The instinct is to immediately cringe and go, the left is trying to kill your kids, right? And now you see that it is really not that simple. It's a bit more nuanced than that. But should parents have the final say in a terminally ill child requesting medical assistance in dying? In context, I think no, right? Should they be consulted? Absolutely. Anyways, I know the debate is going to rage on. I'll leave that with you guys. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'll see you next time when I'm not talking about dying. Yeah, I'll see you next time. Take care, guys.